Ciao amici, and welcome back to Experience Italy with Friends. Fall has officially arrived in Italy, and with it comes a whole new kind of magic. The crowds thin out, the air turns crisp, and the food, well, it somehow gets even better. In today's episode, we're diving into the many reasons that autumn is such an incredible time to visit Italy. From the harvest festivals and cozy comfort foods to the golden landscapes and peaceful piazzas. So, grab an espresso or maybe a glass of vino and join us as we celebrate La Dolce Vita in its most colorful season. Let's get started. Andiamo! Experience Italy with Friends is a travel and lifestyle podcast where we will explore our favorite destinations and hidden gems, share key travel tips and cultural insights, and provide real-time updates about our move to this remarkable country. Join me, Tanya Razzo, an Italian travel expert and founder of Amici Vacations, and my Italian husband and producer, Davide Razzo, on a journey that is sure to inspire you and prepare you to create immersive and authentic experiences of your own in the beautiful country of Italy. Ciao, everyone, and welcome back. Here with me, as always, is my husband and co-host, Davide. I'm excited to talk about fall, Davide. How about you? What does fall mean to you now that we're in Italy?
Ciao a tutti. Well, fall is my most favorite season of the year. Already in Minnesota it was. I love to see the foliage changing. Everything goes dormant. It's just a magic time, I think. And I remember the trips we did when we went up north, Minnesota, to see that foliage, Funny enough, speaking of, the other day on Facebook, on the memories, one of those posts came back. And that was the one from 5 years ago, where we played with the idea to move here to Italy. Do you remember?
I do. Actually, that memory popped up on my feed as well. And it's still hard for me to believe that we actually went from just casually chatting about moving to Italy on our ride up north to actually doing it. Like, we talked a lot about it in our first episode, but it was a fall weekend in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, that started this crazy adventure.
Yeah.
We had driven a few hours up to the north shore of Lake Superior to enjoy the peak of the changing colors. And who would have guessed it was going to be such a pivotal point in our lives?
Well, we're here now, right?
We are. And, maybe it was the changing season that inspired me. Like you, Fall has always been my favorite season. There's just something about summer winding down, a new crisp in the air, and the beginning of a new school year that somehow re-energizes us and gets us thinking about what's next and what's for our future. And, but before we start talking about the fall season here in Italy, let's provide our audience an update on our life here in Montepulciano.
Good idea.
So, Davide, we've been talking lately a lot about harvest.
Uh-huh.
Are you finally done?
Yes, we are done. They finished, because I did not go on the last day, but they finished it like a week ago. And they actually videoed the last bucket that they dumped onto the truck to be brought onto the winery. And that was fantastic. And now today is Wednesday. Sunday, thank you, Tanya. Sunday, we are having the celebration of that harvest. So with all the people there, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. And, mentioning celebrations, we've been visiting a lot of the sagre around town. We went to the wine festival in Chiusi, the Festa dell'Uva, where, similar to the Brevio here in Montepulciano, each neighborhood or contrade hosted a dinner outside. And God, it was fun. They strung lights, across the street back and forth. And each neighborhood had a different menu and specialties. And then we went to the Goose Festival in Montepulciano Stazione in the Sagra d'Ocho. Here it was the entire town celebrating, and it felt more like a small town fair with like rides and booths. And, they had a big dinner, not just, the neighborhood dinners, but a big one. And it was featuring goose. And, other than foie gras, I don't think I've ever eaten goose before. Have you?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. So it's not like something we eat, in Switzerland or in the US, right?
Right.
We discussed that. So why don't people eat Canadian goose. You know,
A lot of them.
so there's plenty of them. So what did you think of it?
Well, I liked it, but to be honest, as with many strange things, it sort of tastes like chicken, right? You can't tell the difference. But what I did love was the community coming together, and we got to experience how Italians line up for an event.
OMG, that was an experience. We picked the neighborhood that we wanted to eat in right away, so we couldn't stand in line. And then the line was forming longer and longer.
Like around the block.
Yeah, and then here comes the Italians, the smart butts, right? So some people came into the front and asking their friends, hey, can you buy me my dinner as well? And they would hand out the cash and all of that. And so it took forever to process the first, maybe 30 people, right?
Probably.
Yeah. And
he was getting angrier and angrier.
Yeah. And some people were bashing and getting angry and said, yeah, anyway.
I had to laugh and I said, what did you expect? This is the Italian way. When in need, ask a friend.
I know. But the other thing is, what was important was that in such festivals like that, the food runs out. When it's done, it's done. So if you're in the back of the line, you might not be lucky to have ocha or the goose, right? So,
well, anyway, it was an experience and we had to chuckle at the Italian way of queuing up. And, what else is going on, Davide?
We finally have cooler weather, Tanya. So, which means change your clothes. People are wearing jackets. At night, it's nice to sleep with the window open. Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of snuck up on us, though. One minute I was buying a fan because ours died for whatever reason, and I was melting while at the computer with the afternoon sun on me. And then the next day I was looking for where I stored my jacket and shawls.
Yeah, it was a sudden change because on my last... when I was harvesting, the 1 week was really hot. And then all of a sudden, the last week, it was nice. Not too hot. And it was actually nice.
No, it's been wonderful.
Okay, but Tanya, let's jump into the episode. And speaking of the weather, let's move now to our first reason why you should visit Italy in the fall. Tanya, why don't you go ahead and tell us more about the weather?
The weather is one of the best parts about fall in Italy. It's just delightful. After the brutal heat of August, and we're talking brutal, everything finally cools down. You don't have to worry as much about finding a place with air conditioning, and it's so much more pleasant to go sightseeing or eat outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a sweet spot, that the summer crowds is gone and, and the days are still long and bright,
In a lot of ways, the weather shifts from north to south here in Italy, similar to how it does in the U.S. During September, the north averages from about the high 60s to high 70s during the day. And it's cooler at night, especially up in the mountains. But here in central Italy where we are, it's usually in the low 70s to low 80s. It's truly perfect for being outdoors.
Yeah. And, if you would go south, like Amalfi or Calabria, hey, it's still beach weather. People are still going to the beach. 70s and even higher 80s there. So you was just there and you went swimming, right?
I did. And the water was still fairly warm. The beaches were quiet. And it's the best kind of late summer. And what's funny, though, is that I checked the weather forecast across Italy today, October 8th. And, it's 70 in Milan, 74 in Florence, 69 in Calabria. So practically the same temperature everywhere.
I mean, it's true. Early fall is really that in-between season, and September especially feels like an extended but more enjoyable summer month, So
you're right. I still think of September as a continuation of summer. And then as we move into October, things are starting to cool off. As we mentioned, it's a good 10 degrees lower across the board. And in the north, you're looking at highs in the 60s, definitely crisp, but perfect for outdoor activities, especially around the lakes and mountain towns.
In central Italy, it stays in the mid 60s, 70s, warm and sunny days like today, and cool, cozy evenings, like we're using our blankets again. So
No, finally.
in the south, it's still in the high 60s and 70s. Perfect for exploring the outdoors. The water might start getting chilly to go in, but people are still going to the beach.
Yeah, I love October. These cooler temps, the golden light and everything smells like harvest season. And, I'm definitely not alone. Like my tour guides and I have been chatting recently and we're saying that October feels like the new September. There's just a lot more people visiting. And so they've got the 411.
Yeah. But, November is right around the corner or almost. And then it's going to be definitely fall. Maybe even the start of winter in certain parts of Italy, right? Temperatures are going to drop to the, into the 40s in the mountains. You usually see snow. It can be quite rainy too.
Yeah, and here in central Italy, though, November tends to still be in the 50s, maybe with some rain, while the south stays milder, around the 60s with plenty of sunny days. It's such a beautiful contrast across the country.
Yeah. Well, so to sum it up, Tanya.
Well, I would say the weather across Italy is fairly mild throughout September to November, like the entire fall season, and it's a great time to be here. As you head into November, expect more winter-like weather, especially in the north, but central and south are still quite pleasant, and I think it's perfect for sweater weather.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that, it's my favorite season of the year. So, well, we just talked about this amazing weather, but there's another big reason why to visit Italy this time of the year, Tanya.
Yes, it's harvest season. We were talking about this a little bit in our update, but the countryside is now buzzing with activity. It's grape harvest time, as Davide has been talking about in the vineyards, and olives are getting ready to be picked, and the markets have been overflowing with fresh mushrooms and truffles.
Exactly. So in wine regions like Tuscany, Piedmont, and Veneto, you'll see the grape harvest, or we call it la vendemmia, which starts from mid-September and goes through mid-October. And then many wineries welcome visitors for tastings and tours. And if you're lucky, you might even catch a glimpse of what's going on in the winery.
Yeah, we were there and, recently at an agriturismo doing a cooking class, and we happened to be there during harvest. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode. And it was fun to see everybody in the vineyards and the grapes being hauled in. And, just don't expect to be able to jump in and help, though. And, I used to think that, like when we came here in previous years, I'm like, can we participate in the harvest, thinking that they might have some of these activities? And what I learned is that the timing is just too critical. Like once it's ready to harvest, like they have to quickly get the grapes in. And there's obviously safety rules as well. So don't expect to help out, but you can definitely soak in the atmosphere, take some incredible vineyard photos, and enjoy a glass of wine while you're at it.
Yeah. And, at the end of October, usually it starts the harvest of the olives. And that's when the olio novello is made, the new olive oil, right? And, that olio novello is so bright green and it's peppery. It's incredibly fresh, and then Italians just drizzle it all over the food and, but they don't use it to cook.
No. And what I did learn actually, and it wasn't too long ago that, someone explained this to me, is that the fresh oil is what everybody is after. And they use it in their, best dishes. Like it's the salads, the bruschetta, and finishing your meats and your soups. And they save last year's oil for cooking. And so, I didn't know that. And, thinking about this concept, I just wonder how old is the oil that is shipped to other parts of the world. When we finally get it, it's probably all the aged oil. So it just makes me appreciate the fresh oil around here even more. And I would love to participate in an olive harvest. So I'm reaching out to a couple of friends, but I also want to go to a mill and see how they the pressing process. We haven't done that. And I think that would be super cool.
Yeah. I heard that picking olives is way harder than picking grapes. So
maybe we sign up for one day?
Huh?
Maybe just one day.
I'm thinking I'm going to pass. You can go. So Yeah, but okay, enough of olive oil, Tanya. There's also mushroom and truffle season. There's the porcini mushroom that is in season right now. And there's, also the very rare white truffle in northern Italy, even here in Tuscany, very rare. And if you are an adventurous foodie, you can even go on a truffle hunt with a guide and the dogs.
Yes, we did that for the first time last fall. You remember last year?
Yeah.
And it was so fun. I thought of it was more of an excuse to hike in the woods, and the dogs were fun to watch and play with. But the best part for me was lunch with truffle on everything.
Oh, yes. It was so good.
So, Davide, we talked about the harvest itself, right? The grapes, the olives, the truffles, but the celebration doesn't stop there.
No, not at all. Because in Italy, when there's good food, there's always a festival, una sagra.
Exactly. And another great reason to visit Italy in the fall are the sagra and the seasonal festivals. And we talked about that, of course, in our update, because that's what's going on around us right now. And they're really the heart of how Italians celebrate harvest time. It's through the food, their wine, the local traditions.
Yeah, I mean, people come back after their August vacation and they go back right back into their routine. And then they prepare what's to come, right? They prepare for the harvest. Then they do the harvest. And then they always look forward to the celebrating that harvest, right, Anya?
That's the best part.
So, and every region has its own way of celebrating. Sometimes it's a big event that draws people from all over. And sometimes it's, a tiny village sagra where everyone knows each other.
You're right. And, we've been to a couple of different kinds. And in the north, fall means truffles and wine. We were just talking about that. And probably the most famous festival is the Alba Truffle Fair in Piedmont. We went years ago and it's just incredible. I love the smell of truffle. And all of these tents were organized there with all different variations of how to eat truffle and demonstrations. And then they had parades. And I also thought the town of Alba itself was super charming.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's all about the tartufo bianco, that white truffle. And it's a very rare one, as I said before. And the season, it runs from early October through December. So if you're in Italy in late fall, it's definitely worth the detour, right? And it's not just truffles. There's wine tastings and cooking demos and even a donkey race.
I would love to see that, and the landscapes there, the vineyards around Barolo and Barbaresco, they turn gold and red, and it's harvest season, but the pace slows down. And I had clients there just last week, and they got there a little bit too early because I think the festival's beginning this weekend.
Okay.
But they loved the area. Tons of good things to report.
Yeah, we're going to miss it too. We're going to go at the end of October, right, to Torino? So.
Well, we could go.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, so moving down the country to closer to home here in Tuscany, we're spoiled. We mentioned a number of them already. There's a sagra for chestnuts, truffles, olive oil, mushrooms, new wine. Practically something every weekend. There's, a festival nearby.
Yeah, I mean, right. So Castagno, Vino Nuovo in San Gimignano, to the Sagra del Fungo Porcino in Monte Amiata. And of course, one of our favorites is the Boccacesca in Certaldo, which we're going to go this Friday. So, and it's not too far away from Florence. And, they celebrate everything Tuscan, the food, the wine, and just the art of, slowing down, right?
Yes, we're finally going to go to it this coming Friday, and I can't wait. It's in the medieval streets of Certaldo, and there are going to be demonstrations with local chefs and tastings and wine stands and art, and we'll report out all about it on the next episode.
Well, then in Umbria, right now next to us, they have the Euro Chocolate Festival in Perugia. It's a festival which is entirely dedicated to the chocolate. And this year it runs in mid-November. And, I'm looking forward to the one too, because it's finally my favorite thing is sweetness and, something sweet and always something savory.
Well, we definitely have to go to that too. You don't have to twist my arm to go eat chocolate. But in the South, fall looks and feels a little different. And we noticed that when we were in Calabria in August. We were talking about this with our Ferragosto episode, that there were a lot of Sagre going on. And that's because harvest starts and ends sooner.
Exactly. So the weather stays warm well in October. So fall there feels more like an extended summer. But it's still, full of life. They have the Sagra del Fico in Cosenza, for example, and they celebrate the figs. Cosenza is a famous region for it. And then, of course, they have the Sagra della Castagna, which is the festival of chestnuts. And they usually happen in mountain towns like Serra San Bruno and Mammola.
Yeah, you can't forget Puglia in Sicily. And, I read that they are famous for the mushrooms in Puglia. And Sicily has Sagra dedicated to the prickly pears.
Yes, Figo d'India.
Yeah, so these are more smaller community-driven events. And, I think that's what makes them really special too.
Yeah. So to sum it up, what makes these festivals so special is that you connect with real Italian life, First of all, you're tasting what's in season. You talk to locals and you actually experience the culture the way Italians would do, So I think that's what makes them special.
Yes, no, I completely agree. And, after talking about all these Sagra and festivals, I think we've already landed on our next reason to love fall in Italy.
Yay!
The food, of course, like we've already been talking about it, but let's tell more about the food in the fall.
Okay, well, like you said, it's another great reason, and Italy's cuisine in the fall is incredible. Tanya mentioned earlier that this is truly the season for food lovers, and everywhere you go, the menus changes. So, and it's all about rich, earthy, comforty flavors.
Yes, I love it. It's exactly how you've described it. And, fall is when Italy brings out the best ingredients. It's the truffles, it's the chestnuts, it's the mushrooms that we've been talking about, and the hearty soups and pasta dishes that make you want to cozy up with a glass of red wine. And we've been doing this already. I have to tell everybody, Davide makes a killer minestrone soup.
Thank you, Tanya. We can't forget the new olive oil, where we put it all over the good foods, bruschetta and all the delicious salads.
Completely agree. Love the fresh olive oil. And when you go to the markets or eat at a local trattoria, you'll notice everything revolves around what's in season. It's truly a foodie's paradise, especially if you love earthy dishes.
Yeah, Tanya, I know. The mushrooms and the truffle, but you know what also makes it great? It's the wild game, or we call it the selvaggina. So, they have wild boar, deer, rabbit, and even pheasant. So, every region has its own specialties. Let me start to give you a couple here. So, wild boar or cinghiale, it's known here in Tuscany or Umbria, Lazio, and even in Sardinia. Did you know that?
I did.
Yeah. So, and then, a classic dish, for example, is pappardelle al cinghiale, which is the white ribbon pasta with the wild boar meat sauce. So
it's wonderful.
Yeah. Or, they stew it, the wild boar here, in red wine. It's delicious. It's really great food that pairs with the cooler weather. So
I agree. And if you head north in places like Trentino or Piedmont, you'll find venison or cervo. It's often served as a slow-cooked spezzettino di cervo with polenta or grilled with wild berries. And up in the Alps, they even cure or smoke it into sausages.
Yeah, there's also hare or rabbit, right? Lepre o coniglio selvatico, either stewed or even oven roasted with veggies, potatoes. Awesome. We actually saw a couple of hunters when I was harvesting, hunting for a hare there. So anyway, and speaking of hunters, there's pheasant, as I mentioned. And, the Fagiano is another one that you see on menus in Lombardy or Veneto, Tuscany, Emilia-Romagna. We haven't had it here yet. We ate so much pheasant in Minnesota. So I like it, but
you're right. I don't think we've had it here, but maybe we need to seek it out because I learned that it's served often roasted with polenta or stuffed with chestnuts and herbs. And, used in pasta sauces and sounds yummy to me.
Yeah, I know it. Everything is yummy. So we need to try them at least at one point. I love it. So for me, the Selvaggina really highlights all the local ingredients. The wine, the herbs, and the olive oil. It's all part of the same landscape. It all comes from there. I love it. So
yes, I love it. It's truly comfort food, warm, rich, perfectly matched to the season. And we're really in tune with this coming from Minnesota in our cold weather. We love our comfort food and our hot dishes. But here, my favorites are the ribollita. It's really a nice vegetable stew or a tomato soup and lots of hearty pastas. And this is my favorite time of the cooler weather.
Yeah. Comfort food, it is the best.
It is. So honestly, though, after all that amazing food, you might be ready to move around a little bit. And fall is one of the best times to get outside and do things in Italy. The weather's cool enough to be comfortable, and the scenery is incredible wherever you go.
Yeah, it is perfect for spending it outdoors, cycling, hiking, and just, explore the countryside. Actually, I need to pick up cycling again because I gave it up a little bit, but I need to get back to it. It's more enjoyable when it's not 90 degrees outside. So,
okay, good luck with that. But you're right. It's the perfect season for it, especially after all of those food festivals. And, but if you'd rather stroll than cycle, you can take your time exploring the little towns, stop at different wineries, visiting an agriturismo. Fall is a great time here in Italy for cooking classes, farm stays, and even, grape or olive picking demonstrations.
I know, right? I love agriturismo, but you know what? That's also nice to do. It's going to a spa. And, they have a lot of the spas here, even in Tuscany. And it's actually very nice to sit in a warm water, when it's chilly outside.
Yeah, and some of them are super popular, like Saturnia. You'll see it all over TikTok. And what was kind of odd about it here is that people love to go in summer. And then I was talking with the locals and they're like, no, you don't go to the thermal springs in summer. You wait until fall and winter because, like you said, it's like perfect weather to go sit in hot water.
Yeah, they function like a hot tub.
Right. And so I think it's one of those best kept secrets in Italy in the fall is that you can really go out and do all these activities. And yet there's like this downtime of strolling through the outdoors and then finish the day and soaking in one of these natural springs.
Yeah. And they apparently are very healthy.
They're very.
Yeah. Anyway. About all those experiences we just talked about, the hot springs, the cycling, the hiking, is the scenery. You get to see the magical coasts and landscapes, foliage and all that. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, fall in Italy is super stunning. The north is probably the most dramatic once you think like you've got like the Dolomites and the northern lakes. And here you've got a lot of those traditional colors like in northern US where you've got the reds, the golds, the deep oranges. And, as we transition into central Italy, you've got the vineyards and the great colors, but I wouldn't say it's as dramatic as the north. And what about the south, Davide? Like, what have you noticed about south in the fall?
It reminds me a little bit of Florida in so many ways. It's not as much as changes to the trees, but, you have palm trees, you have a lot of evergreen trees, and, maybe up in the mountains, you see some of the foliage change, but not too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really notice as much of like a true like fall change of scenery when we've been down in Calabria. But again, we haven't maybe gone up into the mountains. So maybe that's the big change.
Yeah. Well, what also changes in the fall when you come into the fall is actually everything slows down. There's less crowds. The big cities of Florence, Rome, Venice. I mean, they're still alive, but there's less people there and it's more enjoyable. So.
Oh, it's tons more enjoyable. Like you can actually stop and admire the art without being shoulder to shoulder with 100 other people. And even the major museums like the Uffizi or the Vatican are far more relaxed, especially in October and November.
Yeah. And, it's also easy to get tickets. especially when spontaneously want to go to the Uffizi, you will have tickets.
Yeah, no, it's a much better time to be here. And to be honest, with fewer tourists means better prices. I think that's another great reason to come here in the fall is that it's much easier on the wallet.
Yep. We talked about it in episode 23. The peak season in Italy kind of shifted a little bit. September is still kind of busy, but October, definitely less expensive than, summer.
Yeah, when I was actually planning some trips, starting in the spring, the difference between September and October was almost like 20%.
Wow.
So it's a huge difference. And it might change, as I mentioned, October is getting to be more popular than September. So we might not see that continue. But, what we've also seen is that flights in November can be 30 to 40% cheaper.
Yeah.
Compared to August. And, it's one of the best times to experience Italy. And I have actually a lot of customers coming around Thanksgiving. And I don't know if everybody is, I think it's just there's this assumption that everyone's going to go to the US, for Thanksgiving, and all Americans are staying home to be with loved ones for Thanksgiving. But it's a great time to actually come to Europe and to Italy. And I'm finding a lot of great options at like unbeatable prices.
Yeah. Well, so Tanya, great weather, fantastic food, breathtaking sceneries, fewer crowds, better prices. Do we have anything else to convince people to come here in the fall?
No, I think we've made our case. Fall in Italy is fabulous, and it is really the dolce vita at its coziest and comfortable with the cool weather, the cozy food, comfort food. Love it.
That was kind of poetic. Okay, so I guess all we have left, as usual, at the end of every episode, before we say goodbye, is Tips from Tanya. Tips from Tanya.
Okay, well, let's start with the first tip, and one that I'm asked most frequently about is, Tanya, in the fall, what do I pack? Okay, Davide, what's so funny?
Well, I just got an email from a buddy and asked me that. So what should I tell him?
Well, I first have to just reiterate that the weather is constantly changing. It's mostly mild, but it's surprising when the sun is out, it feels like summer. But as soon as it ducks behind a cloud, you're reaching for a jacket. And if it rains, it's downright cold.
Yep.
So, the best bet is to have lots of layers. You may still be wearing dresses and shorts during the day, but you'll want a sweater or sweatshirt, jean jacket to pull on whenever you're in the shade. And definitely by evening, you're shifting into pants.
Yeah.
And also, of course, don't forget shoe wear. You need a variety of shoe wear. So you might be wearing sandals during the day, but you're going to want probably closed-toed shoes by evening. And because we're also entering into rainy season, do not come without an umbrella or a light raincoat.
Okay, cool. And what's your next tip, Tanya?
Well, my second tip is to point out that fall is the start of the cultural season here in Italy. And what I mean by that is while everyone's headed back into the cities, it's actually a great time to be heading indoors to museums and theaters. Milan and Verona's fall opera season kicks off. Rome, Florence, and Perugia have jazz festivals and exhibitions. There is a very large international film festival in Rome. It has premieres and outdoor screenings.
Fun.
Then Milan, Venice, and Naples host lots of art museum events. And let's not forget that there's Milan's Fashion Week every September. It's one of the world's top style events. So if you're planning a trip in the fall, our tip is don't just think of the vineyards and the countryside, but plan a few days in a city and make sure to check what's going on in the theaters, museums, and local cinemas.
Well, we are going to do some of that. Actually, we're going to go see a soccer game at the end of October, right, Tanya?
Yes, no, it's a great event to be kicking off the fall. Okay, but here is one last fall travel tip. Especially if you visit Italy in late November, as I was just talking about, perhaps over Thanksgiving, you might be able to catch the start of the Christmas market season.
I don't want to think about it right now, but we're there.
Well, a lot of people think you have to come in December to see the Christmas markets, but many of the best ones actually open mid to late November. So it's a great way to get that festive magic in without the big holiday crowds. And In the north, the most famous one is in Bolzano. It's one of Italy's oldest Christmas markets and feels straight out of a snow globe. Then in central Italy, you'll find more historic style markets. Like we've been to the one in Florence. It's a German style market in Santa Croce. I wasn't super impressed with it, to be honest.
No, me neither.
But my favorites in the area were actually nearby Arezzo. And even Montepulciano here has a really cute, super, Christmas market.
Yeah.
And Perugia and Rome also kick off their markets by the end of November. And in the South, Naples is famous for its artisan nativity scene makers. And so Christmas is a time for them to shine. And in Salerno, I learned there is a lights display that really transforms the city called the Luci di Artista. So if you're in the South during November, make sure to check that out.
Well, there you have it. Thanks, Tanya, for all these tips, as usual. And, Italy in the fall. Like I said, fewer crowds, incredible food, stunning scenery, and, slower pace, dolce vita. And, we know why this country is so special.
Exactly. Whether you're wandering through vineyards in Tuscany, tasting truffles in Piedmont, or enjoying the last warm beach days in the South, autumn in Italy really is something to experience at least once.
Hey, and if you ever visited Italy only in the summer, maybe, these festivals and the food entice you to come in the fall.
As always, Amici, thanks for joining us. And don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share the episode with your fellow Italy lovers.
And remember, check us out on Facebook, on our Facebook group page, Experience Italy with Friends.
Alla prossima. And happy fall from Tuscany.
Ciao, ciao.
We hope you've enjoyed Experience Italy with Friends. If you like the podcast, remember to follow us and leave a review letting us know what you found to be the most helpful. And if you want expert advice or assistance in creating your own immersive and authentic experience in Italy, visit us at www.amicivacations.com.